the Mpumalanga Premier, Refilwe Mtshweni-Tsipane, who has announced new members to her Executive Council. Among them is Mandla Msibi, who's been reinstated as MEC for Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs. Msibi was charged with murder, but the charges were provisionally withdrawn pending more information. Well, let's get the latest now from our reporter Mweli Masilela, who is at the offices, provincial offices today. Let's speak to him now. Mweli, good morning to you. The Premier clearly making this announcement, but voters and I suppose residents in Mpumalanga are going to be asking the question, so what happens if and when Mandla Msibi and the charges against him are reinstated? Remember, the key word here is that these charges were provisionally withdrawn.
Yes, indeed, Koli. I think this is something that we have been expecting for almost 2 weeks. There's been talk about the reshuffle of the executive here in Mpumalanga, and yes, indeed, it's happening today. The Premier, Refilwe Mtshweni-Tsipane, announcing some changes in the executive. As you have rightly put it, we know that Mandla Msibi, whose charges were withdrawn not so long ago at the Mpumalanga division of the High Court, he has now been brought back into the executive. We know that he was the MEC for Agriculture, but this time around, Premier Refilwe Mtshweni-Tsipane announcing that he will take the portfolio of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs. That's a portfolio where Mandla was actually the MEC, so he has since been moved to the Department of Public Works, Roads and Transport. And there is a new member also in the executive, that is Mpumi Hlope, who has got, according to the Premier, some experience in local government. So she's being brought in that particular department as MEC for Finance, Economic Development and Tourism. But from the side of the Premier, I must tell you that what she said is that these changes are made to accelerate service delivery, saying that people of Mpumalanga have got a lot of expectations. So as an executive, as they are assessing the performance, they felt that there is a need to then make these changes fully.
Mweli, the Premier, again, I belabor this point around Mandla Msibi. Was there a pointed question around what happens, Premier, if and when the charges against Mandla Msibi are reinstated? Are you going to fire him again, only to bring him back if and when he is ultimately cleared? Because that's the problem here. It's that this case has not been dealt with decisively. It's not been concluded, basically. So the charges could very well come back.
Yes, indeed, you are right, because that's a question that we also put across, especially to the NPA when those charges were withdrawn. And we even needed clarity in terms of provisionally withdrawn or withdrawn completely. And what the NPA said at that time is that they were provisionally withdrawn. Even in court, what the judge said is that they might be reinstated. But then on the side, especially of the ruling party, the matter is these charges are withdrawn now, so at least his name is cleared, and they've been saying that he tried to comply to all those guidelines, especially the step aside rule. So the fact that those charges are withdrawn, then he is allowed to serve both in his party, which is the ANC, as well as in government. But asking about that particular pointed question, well, I think we can still get a chance to speak to the Premier about that. But it looks like from the side of the executive here, they're giving him this opportunity because the issue was those charges that he was facing. But then since they have been withdrawn, he's now back. But let's take a listen to what the Premier had to say in as far as this reshuffle is concerned, Paul.
You will recall that Mr. Msibi stepped aside after charges of serious nature were leveled against him. These charges have since been withdrawn. His decision to voluntarily step aside proved that Mr. Msibi believes in clean governance and served as an example to all other leaders who find themselves in the same position. I have no doubt that MEC Msibi will put more impetus in our efforts as government to help municipalities deliver on their service delivery mandate.
So yes, Koli, that is the Premier of Mpumalanga, Refilwe Mtshweni-Tsipane, actually explaining in terms of what has informed these changes. But of course, a lot of expectations from the side of the newly appointed MEC for that portfolio of finance, economic development and tourism, because we know that she is new in the executive, so many people will be looking into what moves is she going to make. But also on the side of Mandla Msibi and Mandla, we know that they've already served in this executive, so there's expectation of continuation in as far as service delivery is concerned.
Well, Mweli, let's round up our conversation then and talk about Mandla Msibi. That's the other Mandla here, Mandla Msibi, who happens to wear two hats. So he is now the MEC of Public Works and Roads and Transport in Mpumalanga, but he is also the leader of the ANC in the Mpumalanga province, chairperson of the ANC there. Surely there's got to be a conversation to be had with him about the inclusion of Mandla Msibi into this provincial cabinet, because he's the leader of the party, and we know that the premiers, whenever they reshuffle cabinets, the people who are consulted first, it is the political party. Surely he's got to have a thing to say about whether or not the inclusion of Mandla Msibi was the right thing to do by the Premier.
I think we must agree that after the withdrawal of those charges against Mandla Msibi, the first thing we did was to get a comment from the ruling party, the African National Congress, in this province. We had an opportunity to speak to the secretary, that is Muzi Chirwa, about those developments. And then what he said is that as the ANC, they are actually happy about the fact that those charges have been withdrawn, and are expecting Mandla Msibi to be back in his position as a treasurer of the ANC at that particular point. And of course, actually going on to say that the fact that those charges are withdrawn, there is a possibility that he might be coming back to serve in government. But of course, we know that actually the Premier isn't the only person involved in this process. They normally say that it's in the ANC where the center holds, or where the power is. So I would guess that the Provincial Executive Committee of the ANC had some discussion in as far as this matter of the reconfiguration of the Provincial Executive Council is concerned. So I can tell you that from the side of the ANC, there was some agreement that indeed Mandla Msibi can come back to serve here in the provincial government. So that is why hence we're seeing him today being back, and of course those few changes. But I can tell you also that there are some concerns from other members of the ANC that those who have been removed, which is Vusim Kwachwa, who was MEC Finance, Economic Development and Tourism, and then Mohita Lachminarin, who was actually the MEC for Public Works, Roads and Transport. Some are saying that those are young people who have graduated from the ANC Youth League. They must be given a chance to lead this portfolio. So we are going to see as to how this unfolds within the ruling party itself.
Mweli Masilela, thank you very much for the time being. Live for us at the provincial government offices in Mpumalanga.